Okay, if you manage your clients in ClickUp and every day it feels like you're being pulled in a million different directions and ClickUp's not really helping that much, I can guarantee that it comes down to how you have it set up in ClickUp. And that's because there is one best practice for client work in ClickUp, and that is clients managed at the folder level inside of a client workspace. And if you're a freelancer and your goal is to reclaim your time, protect your energy, and keep your clients profitable, then this is arguably one of the most important things that you need to understand. So consider this video a little ClickUp self-audit. And even if you already use folders for your clients, there's a good chance that you're still missing out on the main benefit that folders bring. So you're going to want to stick around and watch this video. So there's two reasons why it's best practice to have your clients managed at the folder level. And the first is that it's already best practice to use multiple lists for a single client. So obviously you're going to need somewhere to house those. And if you don't know what the list best practice is, I'm going to put a link to my list strategy training at the end of this video and also in the description, because that is also crazy important. But not only that, folders unlock something that most people don't even know ClickUp does, which is honestly kind of crazy because it's the whole reason it's the best tool on the market. And that's ClickUp's ability to consolidate, but then zoom out to give you a bigger picture and decide where your energy is going based on reality, based on data, whether that's how much time you have to spend per client or how much time you realistically have. So let me show you what that looks like, because it's a lot easier to see this big picture view than to talk about it. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you have your clients set up as folders. So they're within a client workspace. The client name is the folder, and then you'll have a number of different lists that all are customized to serve a particular purpose, right? Or streamline a particular type of work. So I have an IT support ticket system, I have my social media management, like project management list, and then I have a workflow for content creation. So they're kind of all their own little systems, their own little engines, if you will. But they all live inside of the client folder. And the folder does a lot more than just act as a way to navigate in your sidebar. Like, it does more than just open and close and house all of the lists that you have within it. Because at the folder level, even though we have each of these individual systems broken out and all of our tasks in their own little buckets, at the folder level, we have the ability to consolidate those lists into one master list. And this is where you can start to be more intentional with where your energy is going and be more strategic from a data perspective, right? Deciding of all the things that you could work on or that the client is asking you to work on, decide what you're going to focus on, but base it on how many hours they actually pay you and what your bandwidth actually is, right? So you get the benefit of having those individual systems, but then you still have this way to create a plan that's rooted in data, that's rooted in reality. So at the folder list level, so if you create a list or whatever the default list is, if you've never customized it, it will default show as grouped by list, which really just means that they've created or sort of lumped the tasks from each list into its own little section, right? We've got the list name, so we know which one these tasks belong to, but this actually isn't a useful way to look at your tasks if you're going to consolidate them. What you really want is one flat list of all of the tasks, because that allows you to start working from a more strategic place. So the first thing that I want you to do at your folder list level is remove the group by list option under the status, under the group by rather, and delete the status. Just get rid of everything. Delete all of the group by options. We want to have nothing. So this is what it's going to look like right away. So you can see we have all of the tasks across the multiple lists that we have created. But one thing that I want to draw your attention to first is that it's also grouping in pieces of content from my social content workflow. And these aren't actually tasks. These are just pieces of content that are getting created that are moving through a workflow. So it doesn't make sense for them to show up at this planning view at the client level. So in order to get rid of any of these non-task tasks, to take those out of this view, what you're going to do is add a task filter called list location. So you're going to go list location is not, and you're going to select the specific workflow list or whichever database or workflow list. Where are the lists where the tasks are not actually tasks? So I'm just going to select that. And immediately now those disappear. So now we're only looking at real work, like projects and tasks. You can also just choose to enable autosave so you don't have to keep saving it every time you make a change. So now to take this list one step further and becoming that much more useful, I want you to think about it in terms of tasks or projects that are planned versus unplanned, which in my world just means that they have a due date, because this sort of like everything, all the stuff you need to do kind of generates or evokes this feeling of overwhelm. And we don't want to do that. So I want you to think about it in terms of planned versus unplanned, which means that in order for it to be planned, that means it has to have a due date. So what we're going to do is add on to our filter and add a due date is set filter. And immediately what that's going to do is eliminate all of the other pieces of work that are unplanned. And now we're focusing in on the things that we have decided are planned for right now. What this looks like in practice is you're going into each of your individual lists that are project and task related, and you're deciding, what do I want to work on at this point? And by adding a due date, you're immediately adding it to your workload planner, or like this consolidated view that we're working from at the client folder level. So we added our due date and immediately now it's showing up here as well. So it's sort of this back and forth of like, here's all the things that I could do, decide what is important to you in this moment, add a due date, and then come and look at it at this consolidated client folder view. What happens often with freelancers is they're a bit more reactive to what the client is asking them to do, and it's constantly evolving versus being more proactive. So you're deciding what happens and when. Obviously, though, within reason, because, with client work, things are changing constantly. So I'm not saying that this plan is that locked in and no changes can be made. That's the best part about it, because if you simply just take off a due date, it will automatically disappear. Now, this becomes a lot more useful when you have your tasks and your projects planned properly, like I teach in Focus Framework, which is having your projects separated from your tasks and taking the time to go through and map out the steps you'll take and the time estimates. Then you have the benefit of adding a time estimate column and then adding a time estimate column sum. So now we're in our planning view. Things that have been marked as due are in focus, and we have our rolling time estimate of how long all of that work that I've put into plan will actually take. So the idea is that you're being proactive, creating a plan. If there isn't a plan in place, this is the other thing. This might be the point where you actually have to build out the projects and actually create the subtasks and build up these time estimates. Just because you've decided you're ready to plan for this client doesn't mean that all of your projects and tasks are ready. But this would be the prompt to actually start creating that work so you can see, okay, I'm now planning to do, the client has asked me to do this, I've created the project, now I have an idea of the time estimate, but oh wait, also the monthly report is due this month and I already told them that I would do this contact form not working. Now that's putting me over scope. So now I have a choice of whether I tell the client, okay, we can either move this one thing out in order to bring this new thing in, or this new thing that you're saying you want me to do has to wait. It allows you to have those conversations and be more pointed in terms of where you're spending your energy or the scope that you have for a particular client and doing it in a proactive way. So you have a plan and you just have to execute on it day over day. So at the beginning of this video, I said that this was a ClickUp self-audit. So here's what I want you to do now. If you have your clients set up as either lists or spaces, meaning you don't already have them set up as folders, this video is actually step 2. So what I want you to do right now is go to the list training first, go figure out the list structure that makes sense for your client work, set it up, and then come back to this video. Now, if you already have your clients set up as folders and you have multiple lists within those folders, try playing around with the folder list level settings that we talked about. Try removing the group by option. And try adding the task filters like due date is set and list location inclusions or exclusions. Then I want you to drop into each list that you have, try assigning work to yourself, and watch as it shows up automatically in your new planning view. And what I really want you to think about is what it would feel like to have this more strategic approach to planning what you do for each of your clients. And only look at what you've chosen to focus on at one time. And if you already have time estimates and your work is already planned out properly, make sure that you have the time estimate column added and the sum. And see how that stacks up to chunks of time. And you can really get a sense for what you're actually assigning to yourself. Now, unfortunately, getting to this point of complete workload clarity doesn't just happen on its own. You kind of need to have the foundation, and that's what Focus Framework is. There's a link in the description if you want to start there. And as always, freelancers, I really want you to drop me a comment if there's a part of ClickUp that you want me to cover. Like, I created this channel and I really want to help freelancers solve real problems. So drop me a comment and I may just make a video about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.